We are here at the Marlboro County Historical Museum. I'm Lynn McQueen, the museum director, and with me today is Mr. Jim Tucker and his better half, Ben. If you've been paying attention to the museum over the past couple of years, you'll know that we have been having an event called Morning at the Museum. It was just an open house where people could come and see our exhibits and just kind of talk about things and share stories and just enjoy each other's company.
Right.
And we haven't been able to have it since the virus hit, unfortunately, and I know I miss it very much, and I think it's probably safe to say that if anybody misses it as much as I do, it's Mr. Jim.
Yep, I do, and be glad when it can start back.
Absolutely, me too. So in the meantime, until it can start back, we thought that it would be fun to get together. It's the first week of the month, if not the first Monday of the month. It's actually Wednesday, but that's okay. And just kind of have Mr. Jim come and tell us some stories, because that's one thing that I learned about him over the course of the past couple of years, is that he loves to tell a story.
I do.
Yep. So he is going to tell us just a little bit about Bennettsville of long ago, and I think what he's going to talk about today mostly is his great-grandfather, Thomas Bolton. So I'm going to go behind the camera and take off my mask, and Mr. Jim, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thomas Marshall Bolton was my great-granddad, and he was called Tom. He was born December the 19th, 1829, and died March the 23rd, 1907. He was the owner and operator of T.M. Bolton and Company, brick manufacturers, Bennettsville, South Carolina. And here is his letter, part of his letterhead.
There it is.
Okay, now Tom was from Virginia. Thomas from Virginia. He was a private in Company G, 19th Virginia Infantry. He spent several years out west after his first wife, Rebecca Fortune, died. And he learned how to make brick out west. I was always told by my grandmother that he went to Texas and learned how to make brick, and then his great-grandson, Nathan McCormick Jr., my second cousin from Lawrenceburg, his grandmother, who was a sister to my grandmother, said he went to Nevada. So whichever story you want to take, do it. Maybe he went somewhere in between Texas and Nevada.
But we said we're going to take Texas because it's warmer, right?
Yeah, that's right. His second wife, whom I'm descended from, is Margaret Ann Mariah Morris, and she went by Mariah. She always said she wouldn't marry a man with children, and after marrying Tom, found out about his 3 children by Rebecca Fortune, she made him go back to Virginia and bring the kids back to Bennettsville. Tom and Mariah had 3 children. Merla, my grandmother, born September 19, 1882. Ashby, born February 29, 1884, and of course that was a leap year. And Iris, born 12/31, 1885, and died October the 24th, 1980. The 3 children by Tom's first wife was Lena, Bertie, and Lonnie, whom he left with his parents. The 3 children they were cared for by his parents, who lived on a farm between Staunton and Waynesboro, Virginia. Iris Bolton McCormick, Merle's sister, my great aunt, she and her daughter, Margaret McCormick Hurley, in 1945 went to Virginia, and they saw the house where Tom had lived in, and they spent several days visiting the Bosselmans in Staunton, and whose grandmother was one of Tom's sisters, Maddie Bolton. Thomas Memorial Baptist Church here in Bennettsville is named after Reverend J.W. Thomas, and it is constructed from brick, handmade brick from Tom's, one of his 2 brickyards, one down around Marlboro and the other one somewhere near Firestone.
Now tell us where Marlboro is.
if you go down 15 to side the hill, where you turn to go to the paper mill, turn right to go to the paper mill, you turn left there and go down, which is now owned by Becker Sand and Gravel. And there was a Paul Covington here who was a rural mail carrier. He also always drove a Plymouth. He always ordered that Plymouth with the steering wheel on the right-hand side. And he owned at one time part of the brickyard where Tom Bolton had his brickyard and the gravel pit there. And I have been down there and gone swimming in the gravel pit that belonged to Tom Bolton at one time.
How about that? That's neat.
Also, the old part of Thomas Memorial Baptist Church is made from handmade brick from his brickyard, as well as the Mutual Savings, what was Mutual Savings and Loan. His was made from handmade brick, as well as the smokestack. It is down there at Firestone. And let's see, Tom and his wife, second wife, Mariah, they lived on what was then known as West Darlington Street, now West Main, in a house that is made out of handmade brick from his brickyard. Well, don't know which one of the brickyards it was made from. It is currently known as the Ellaby House. I have a problem with it being called the Ellaby House since Tom Bolton built the house first, and it was made from his brickyard. But after Tom died, Mariah sold it to a Mr. and Ms. Ellaby, and he later became Governor Ellaby of South Carolina. So that is why it has been known as Ellaby House. But as I say, I think it should be called Bolton/Ellaby House.
And if you call it the Ellaby House, you will be corrected on that, won't you?
By me, if I hear you. If I hear you. Now, down there's across from Thomas Memorial Baptist Church, on the right hand of the street is J.L. Powell Senior House. Then there was the next house on the right going down, belonged to a Dr. Talley, who was a veterinarian here. And then there were two more houses, and then Tom Bolton's house. One of those houses, Miss Lucy McLaurin lived in that house. And she and Aunt Iris and Granny were all about the same age. They were all good friends. And this story is probably they were around 10 to 12 years old at this time.
So little girls.
Little girls. Okay. The Presbyterian preacher came to visit them. Well, Aunt Iris had a rooster named Billy, and she had trained that rooster. She'd say, "Crow, Billy, crow, and I will give you corn," and Billy would crow. Well, Granny, Miss Lucy, and Iris all playing. The Presbyterian preacher came to visit Mariah and got ready to leave, and he was going to have prayer, and Mariah called him in, and Miss Lucy says, "Iris, take Billy in with you." And so Aunt Iris put Billy under her skirt, took in. Right in the middle of the prayer, Miss Lucy says, "Iris, make Billy crow." So Aunt Iris says, "Crow, Billy, crow, and I'll give you corn." Granny said that was the loudest crowing from a rooster she had ever heard before or since. Then, soon as the preacher said amen, Aunt Iris flew.
Oh boy.
Before her mother could find her. Her mother that had mattresses hanging over the banister on the porch, airing them and cleaning them that day. Nobody could find Aunt Iris. When about dark, when great grandma went in to get the mattresses off the porch and put on the beds, there was Aunt Iris hiding between the mattress and the banister with Billy, and she did get what you thought she was going to get.
Oh goodness.
And okay, there I've got there is a receipt that was in the shopper way back from, this was from the,
Got too much in your hands, don't you?
Yeah.
There you go.
This receipt was to Bolton and Moore from R.C. Hudson's store, and it had 106 pounds of flour. I don't know what they were doing with that, but if anybody knows who R.C. Hudson was, or where the store was, and who the name of that mower was, please let Lynn McQueen, Director of Marburg Historical Society, know, because that is history of Bennettsville, and she and I both would love to know that.
Yes, we
answer
would.
to that question. Also, I have a program that was printed on Tom Bolton's letterhead. It's from the Laurinburg Presbyterian Church from Sunday, May the 19th, 1935. And two of Iris's sons, Tom McCormick and Nathan McCormick, who were brothers, sons of Iris McCormick, and grandsons of Tom Bolton. So evidently, they had the, evidently, Tom Bolton they had letterhead, and they used that letterhead to print the program for that Sunday on, since his two grandsons were high school graduates that year. Hey, now, also I have an obituary of Tom Bolton died at his home in Morven, North Carolina on Saturday afternoon after a protracted illness in his 77th year. And as I mentioned earlier, he died March the 23rd, 1907. So he was a well-known resident of our town, referring to Bennettsville, and he was known and liked by everybody. He was an architect and brick mason, and controlled and superintended two large brick plants in the county. And go where you will, you can see monuments of his superior skill and workmanship. During his long residence in our town, he took a deep interest in all public matters and rendered valued service as alderman and chief of police alternately, as long as he resided within the corporate limits of the town. So evidently, West Darlington Street at one time was in and out of the county, out of the town limits. He was plain, unpretentious, honest, truthful, hard-working citizen who loved everybody. Everybody loved Tom Bolton. Truly, it has been said of him, he was a diamond in the rough. That'd be nice to be said of anybody, I think.
That would be very nice to have anybody say that about you.
2 years ago, he sold his property here, which had been 1905 since he died in 1907, and bought a farm near Morven, North Carolina, moved up there. He was a member of the Bennettsville Lodge of the Knights of the Pythias, and his dying request was that his body be brought here and laid to rest by his brethren. The remains were brought over Sunday through the country and met outside of town by Undertaker R.T. Barfield and a committee from his lodge, and taken to the residence of Sheriff J.B. Green, his old friend and next door neighbor for many years, where the remains rested until 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon. I found that interesting statement, remains rested. I'd not heard that in an obituary before, but I guess remains were rested. They weren't doing anything.
They were not doing anything, that's true.
The funeral services were held at Evergreen Cemetery, which is on Jennings Street, and at that time was out in the country from Bennettsville, was not in town. The services were conducted by Reverend Dr. McLeod of the Presbyterian Church, and the body buried with Knights of Pythias honors. The eulogy was delivered by Honorable T.I. Rogers. The following members of the Knights of Pythias and old friends of the deceased acted as pallbearers: Captain J.B. Green, Ira Bounds, W.A. Atkins, E. Powers, J.J. Pearson, and D. Jennings. And this time frame, I feel like that was Dr. Jennings, Dougie's daddy. Dr. Dougie Jennings was a doctor, but his dad was also a doctor, and I feel with this time frame that this was Dr. Douglas Jennings.
It's probably true.
And if anybody knows anything about the Knights of the Pythias, the local chapter, it would be nice if y'all would let Lynn McQueen know, because we would like to have the records of that if they can be found anywhere, to see who all was a member in that period in time. Nobody seems to know when it left Bennettsville or chapter closed down or whatever, and I have not been able to find anybody that can tell me anything. So somebody out there should know.
And please tell us.
And also, R.T. Barfield was the undertaker. Also, Lynn and myself would like to know who R.T. Barfield was, whether his funeral home was here in Bennettsville and where it was located, or whether there were not any funeral homes in Bennettsville. And since McCall has had Barfields, was this a funeral home in McCall at that time, the only one around? So anybody that knows the answer to that, please let Lynn and me know. Hey, and don't keep it a secret from us. Okay, that's about all I can tell you about Tom Bolton, but here is some interesting information from yesteryear. This came from Marlboro Herald Advocate, dated Friday, March the 20th, 1964, in a section called Backward Glances. The tug Helen, towing a lighter of oil and gasoline, arrived at Cheraw last Thursday afternoon, March the 2nd, 1939, completing the first waterborne trip from Charleston to Cheraw in 25 years, so the last trip would have been 1914. Here the cargo was unloaded and the lighter took on brick and gravel, which would be used in the construction of a building at the Citadel. I talked to Colonel, retired, Jim Chapwell, a Bennettsville native and a Citadel graduate, and found out that this particular load of brick and gravel was used to build the Bond, B like in blue, B-O-N-D, building, which was an administration building with 2 wings and is still in use today as administration building.
At the Citadel in Charleston.
Right.
With brick from Bennettsville. How about that?
The trip back was started on March the 26th. Dr. E.H. A. Goldberg, Jr., better known as Buck, a local dentist, and Wayne Tucker, my dad, Bennettsville citizens, boarded the tug and made the trip to Society Hill, 1 hour and 50 minutes being required, where Dan and Buck got off of the tug. But if anybody has any information on what we've had, and also I have thoroughly enjoyed it, a number of people, this first Monday of the month that we've had for so long, and hopefully we can be started back next month.
Well, there you go.
I have no, Lynn, do you have any questions?
I don't think so. I thank you so much for coming and doing this.
You're quite welcome. Ben says thank you for letting him be seen.
Yes, we will give everybody a shot of Ben. And now,
Ben, look at Lynn.
Hey, buddy. All right. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you for having me.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed doing it.